My project focuses on the complexities of blood quantum and how the legacies of colonialism still affects who natives are allowed to date and have children with. Blood quantum is the measurement of Indian blood. It's how native you are according to the federal government. It first became used in the early 1900s by the federal government to basically quantify how many natives there are. The problem with this is it's not how natives have historically identified themselves. We have always intermarried with other tribes, and blood quantum has stopped that. It says that we have to marry only within our tribe, which is the problem because you can only procreate in a small pool of people for so long before you run into issues like you're related to everyone, or there are no suitable people for you to date anymore. We fought so hard to keep our land and keep our resources and keep our people together that we've kind of run this genocide catch-22 where we continue using blood quantum and we eventually, die out because we go extinct, or we open the rolls up to people who might not be as connected to the culture. And that's scary because then you have people. How do we keep out people who are fake? How do we keep out people who are just trying to use the culture and the things to advance? The biggest problem with blood quantum is there's no system to replace it with. My parents are both Native. My mom is Crow and my dad is Salish Kootenai, which means when I was born, they had to pick which tribe to enroll me in. They chose my dad, so I'm Salish Kootenai. And that means if I want my child to be Salish Kootenai, I have to marry or date someone who is Salish Kootenai as well. Growing up, realizing how weird that was, to think of dating in those terms and how limiting dating was in general for me. I wanted to explore what other kids in my position were doing. Because I'm not unique in this, it's this issue is across every tribal nation in the country, how blood quantum is limiting and how it's designed to be unsustainable. And we're seeing that with my generation. I started with my family because I feel like I couldn't tell this story without starting in my own home. And both my siblings happened to be pregnant at that time. It was really unique because my brother, his partner is Navajo, and then my sister's partner is someone from my tribe too. And so right away, I got to see the two juxtapositions between what happens if you date someone who is part of your tribe and what happens if you date someone who's outside your tribe, and the benefits and the pros and cons of both. And so for my brother, that means his child isn't enrolled. And so I got to explore through his partner and his pregnancy, how that affected them. And then with my sister, I got to explore what it meant to be an enrolled member of the tribe. Going from doing several assignments a day to focusing on one and telling the story of someone who I love deeply, and really making sure that I get their story right the way they need it. I think it's taught me so much about journalism in general. And I think we should all treat our subjects and the people we photograph like they're part of our family. For We Women, I really wanted to expand that project into people outside of my family. I wanted to hear other voices and really focus on including not just their voices, their thoughts on the process, and really engage with them on how they want to be represented and how they think blood quantum should be, I guess, or how they interpret blood quantum, I think, and how it's affected their lives. I didn't want it to be me telling them what I think. I just really wanted to let their voices and their work stand out. And so for this project, I did it a little differently, where I'm taking portraits of people who are affected by blood quantum, so Native people around my age, but I also want to include older and younger and just kind of on the spectrum of everywhere to see how we all interpret the system. And I do that by layering the portrait with text of anything they want to write about blood quantum. And my goal is to have this be really interactive and have their voices shine through. I'm very careful because when blood quantum is very controversial, it's a very sensitive subject to a lot of people, and it's about identity, and it's about really personal things. It's about not only their identity, but their children's identity. And it's very sensitive. And so when I do this work, I make sure that I'm really on the same page with the person I'm photographing, or the person I'm talking to, and make sure that they're aware that we're going to spend a lot of time together, and that I'm going to double check a lot, because it's a lot of work to be this engaged. It's not something that's easy. It's not something that can happen in a couple hours one day and then you leave and you have everything you need. It's the constant engagement, I think, that makes the project more powerful, when you have the return to them, and you return to them and you return to them like, hey, is this what you meant? Hey, I know this is what you said. If I take it out of context with this quote, is that what you meant to say still, or should I add more stuff? And it's really important that we do that, because we have a lot of power in this industry. And if we are not using that power to tell the story accurately, then why are we even here? Like, we wouldn't have jobs if it wasn't for the people we photograph. And so it's really important to me that I tell their stories right. There have been so many stereotypes and so many parachute journalists coming into my community and, leaving with these half-truths or quotes out of context or photos out of context where it's not telling the whole story. I worry how my photos affect the community. I think because I know firsthand how harmful it can be, I take that with me, or I took it with me on a lot of my assignments. I think this project challenges narratives in a number of ways, actually. I think one, I'm from the community, so it holds me accountable. And two, because I'm so aware of the stereotypes, I work really hard not to enforce them. I think when we think of Native America, obviously we think of a beautiful culture. We think of, regalia, and a lot of people think of feathers and teepees, and that's because that's the narrative they've been fed for the last 100 years. It's been it's been all they've been fed, really. I think people think of natives in the past because they have only seen work that shows them in the past, and we are thriving. There are over 500 tribes in America, and I think that the narrative that we have vanished is so harmful and so false. It's really important when my work talks about blood quantum and how it's unsustainable, that it's not equated to a vanishing race, right? Because we're not going to vanish. We're going to be here. We're going to be native no matter what the quantum says. And I think that's the point, is that this term vanishing and quantum, it's all part of a genocide of Native people, where people are trying to make us disappear or trying to make us fit the narratives. I want people to relate to natives in the photos, because I think if you can relate to a different culture, then you can see that culture as humans. And I think for a long time, natives have been romanticized or demonized in America for a very long time. We have been the savages, and then we have been like this weird romanticized version of ourselves. But I really want America to see us as ourselves, as we see ourselves. It's because they haven't been taught about our culture. It's because they haven't been taught about our people. And when they have, it's been through stereotypes in the media or stereotypes with mascots or in history books that tend to just leave us out. And so they don't know about us, and that's not their fault. It's not their fault that they weren't taught about us in schools, and it's not their fault that they carry these images of us, but it is their fault if they don't do more to educate. And I just want my project to be a tool to educate people. I want this work to educate people on what contemporary Native America looks like, what it means to be Native in this century, what it means to deal with the issues we have today. I think the more people see us, the more stereotypes are eradicated, right? One of my favorite things about my project is that the pressure to date within your culture is not something that only Native, it's not something that we only deal with, right? Every culture deals with that. I think whether you come from a Jewish family or a Catholic family or a Latina family, like there's always that pressure, I think, to date within your culture, to date what you know. And I know people across the country, across the world have felt that. And so they're able to relate with us on that level. And then I think they're able to see even more when you're saying, yeah, well, we have to date within our culture. We have that pressure, or else our culture dies out. Otherwise, we have a completed genocide. And I think once they're able to see that and realize, like, oh, this person is like me, except for holy, like that's insane. Then it teaches them, and maybe they want to get more information about the legacies of colonialism. Maybe it inspires them to do more research, or to, find out what else is happening, how colonialism has affected Native communities. It's not just by blood quantum. It's not just by putting us on reservations. It's a whole system that keeps natives dying at earlier rates than non-Native people. It keeps them disappearing and being murdered. It gets all connected. The only way to expel ignorance is through education. And that's what I really hope my project does. You can't talk about blood quantum and dating and marriage and birthing without having, I think, a woman centered in that voice. This issue, as unfair as it is, falls directly on women's shoulders. It's a woman's responsibility to birth Native children, right? And so I think when I think of the pressures of this, I think being a woman adds another pressure, because if the woman has a child who is quote unquote not Native, then the blame is going to go on her, right? I think it's important that the story is told by someone who feels the pressures to have Native children. I want to hear from all perspectives, but I think for now, when we talk about the pressures of birthing a Native child, it's important that we have the perspective come from a Native woman who is directly affected by it, and other Native women who are affected by it.